Hi, this is Tami Stronach, best known as the Childlike Empress from the NeverEnding Story.
Hi, Tami. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to speak to me on this. I don't know if it's sunny where you are, but it's like 90 degrees right now in Florida.
Now you're just showing off. I'm in New York. Quite cold.
My wife's from upstate New York, so she tells me all the time how glad she is to be down here.
Yeah. I think you win on the weather one, that's for sure.
Today we'd like to talk about a couple things. A couple of things will be, of course, NeverEnding Story and also what you've been working on recently. A couple of the questions that I got from people that we asked about NeverEnding Story. First one, the most prominent one was, did you enjoy the filming process of making that movie?
I did. I loved it. It was really, really fun. And I think in some ways I was very naive and completely fresh. And I didn't really look at it as a business. I looked at it as a purely creative opportunity. And I just fell in love with the sets and the costumes and the magic of it all. So, I loved the filming process.
And then, was it your decision, or was it someone else's decision to leave the film industry that early on after filming wrapped?
Well, I mean, I think, obviously, for the most part, I would say it was my parents, but it was a family decision. I think, if I had been really adamant about wanting to continue in the business, they're very loving, fabulous people, and they would have taken that deeply into consideration. But the film sort of exploded way more than we anticipated. We didn't really understand that it was going to have a sort of global impact, and our lives were sort of turned upside down. The phone was ringing all night because of the time difference in different countries, and we had people sort of camped out in front of the house, and the whole thing was a little more jarring in a way than we had anticipated. The actual filming process was like incredible, and I think if I could have just stayed on set forever, I would have. But somehow integrating the aspect of being a kind of public figure at a young age was really confusing for all of us, including me. Like I recently met some child actors who are just so into it and they love it, and it's just like a second skin for them. It's like no problem. But I was, just felt really nervous and uncomfortable, and I didn't want to make a big deal about it, and I didn't want to talk about it. It was like the worst celebrity you could imagine. So it just, I think we sort of agreed as a family that while I would continue acting and while I would continue dancing and developing other artistic pursuits that I really cared about, that in terms of the Hollywood machine and navigating celebrity and navigating the business side of it, that we would leave that for me as a decision to make as an adult. So it was a extensive family conversation, and that was what we all agreed on at the end.
Do you have any words of wisdom out there for the other up-and-coming actors, like we see right now with the cast of Stranger Things? They're coming up into that kind of environment where, out of nowhere, this thing exploded, and all the focus is on them. How should they approach that spotlight that gets shined on you 24 hours a day? Well, I do think that the industry's changed a little bit, and I think for the better, which is great. And I think that those kids all have each other, like they're a community, and they're not just doing like a film shoot and then disappearing. They're sort of creating a community over time, because like a Netflix series, goes on for several years. And I think that that's really great because you have a bunch of other people to kind of navigate with together. So I think in that way they're really lucky. And I also think that the sort of social media, it has so many drawbacks, obviously, but it also has some positives in that in some ways I think that social media can be a tool to kind of make us remember that we're all just people, that nobody's like very different than anybody else. And that in some ways there's, if you can if you can approach it properly, you can use it as a tool to connect and find commonality rather than sort of feel like you're different from or separated from people, which I think could be the drawback for it. So I think to just stay, connected and humble and reiterate the commonalities is the way to go. And that keeps you grounded and keeps you part of the world, which obviously is where you want to be.
So basically using the tools of the technology of now to highlight that line between
to connect
the film industry and the person, and making the person the prominent focus.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, this is my personal opinion, but I think in a way celebrities used to be more hard to access. There was like more mystery, and they were more separated, and I think there was this feeling that everyone drinks tea with, some fancy director somewhere, but the truth is, like, people just do their laundry and they try to get their kid to school on time and they fail. And like, I think that as actually, like, in some ways I feel like there's something useful in de-glamorizing it, and it's just a job, and it's a job, and you still have all of life's problems and you still have all of life's realities. And I think that in a way, if you can kind of take ownership of presenting your image and making it as authentic as possible, as opposed to something that somebody else designed and crafted for you and is being sort of makes it sort of uncomfortable to be you, because it isn't you.
Right.
It's like this designer personality, and I think that if you can somehow take ownership and really be as authentic as possible and use it as a tool to connect and be real, it can then become a really positive thing in your life.
Okay. I agree. I agree completely. There's just, I'd hate to see more people go through that stereotypical child film star tumble. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. I'd like to see them just to grow with the industry, because the industry is definitely different from even the small amount that I was in it to now is night and day. And
yeah.
I hate to see more tragedy stories. I want to see more success stories. I want to see young actors build up their talent, build up their resume. And
yes, I actually
social media definitely does seem like. Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No. I interviewed Millie Bobby Brown at a Comic-Con. It was really fun. And I asked her, about her goals and her plans, and she was sort of talking about acting, and I said, have you thought about directing or producing or writing? And she's like, well, no, not right now. And I said, I really think you should. You should start thinking about it now. And I think in some way that's a way that the industry can change, and that's a way that the industry can be also really fulfilling, is if we allow kids that are involved in the industry to start thinking of themselves as makers and sort of exploring not only helping other people bring their vision to life, which is a really fulfilling creative thing to do, but to also feel empowered to be like, well, what are the stories I want to tell, and what are the roles that I want to act in, and to kind of sow that seed in early so that there's a sense in which I think, one of the problems with child actors, and definitely one of the concerns that I faced, was this notion of kind of turning into a commodity at such a young age when you're really fragile and you're still developing your identity. And, it's really easy to kind of get knocked around if your value is sort of turned into, something if you're in and then you're out,
Right.
So I think that I think one way those kids could navigate it, which I'm sure they will, is to also have the adults in their lives and have the people that are steering and mentoring them remind them that they can be part of it as creators in addition to performers.
Speaking of being a creator, after your stint in Hollywood, then you started creating on your own through music and through dance, correct?
Yes. I'm super passionate about people just making stuff. I think that's my favorite thing to sort of do and to talk about. It's just the importance of making. And I had my own dance company in New York for 20 years. and we toured nationally and internationally, and I had a company that I rehearsed out of Brooklyn. And then I was also in a theater company, but it was an ensemble theater company, which I loved in that you got to play many, many roles throughout the show, and you were involved in the creative process and in the development of the play. So we were housed at Soho Rep developing those plays. And so, and then after the birth of my daughter and also graduating from this sort of peak physical athletic time of being a younger dancer, I was looking for a new project and a new way to kind of stay growing and interested in making. And I formed Paper Canoe actually with my husband, who's an actor and a director. And so now I've kind of done a full circle. I feel like I started in family entertainment and in stories that kids and adults could enjoy together. And funnily enough, I'm back there again asking myself, what kind of stories would families enjoy together? And that's what I want to be making right now. My daughter's 7, so that just feels right for me at this moment.
So you've got firsthand knowledge of what you need to make family entertainment just right there. If she's not entertained, then
totally. Everything goes by her at the dinner table. She's like, I don't know, Mom. I don't know. Or she's like really into it and she's like covered the fridge with the drawings and you're like, okay, this is sticky. This is working.
So what are some of the things that you're working on to come out of this? What are you currently building up to?
Well, so when I started the company a couple of years ago, I started in what I know. You always fold into what you know. And for me, that was live performance. So we developed a show that I love and still want to bring back in some new incarnations called Light. And it's a sci-fi dystopia about a young girl who saves the day. The world, all the light has been sucked out of it. The sun's been stolen, and she has to literally save the day. So that was a play we did, and it had a kind of steampunk vibe to it. And then we did another puppet show for younger kids in Brooklyn that ran for many months, and it was called Aesop's Fables, based on Aesop's Fables. And it was so much fun because it developed out of a snowstorm. We were snowed in for 3 days with our daughter, and I just decided that we weren't going to watch television. We were going to just make stuff the whole snowstorm. And so we started looking around the house and opening drawers, and we found socks, and we made sock puppets. And then her winter boots, we put like tinfoil around them and stuck like forks on them, and they became soldiers. And we sort of like started making all these things. And from that little weekend, this little show developed. And then we brought her friends over, and then our friends were like, oh, you should do this for the community. And then we did it for the community, and then it moved to a theater, and then it was like sold out for several months. It was sort of this really, really organic little development. So we have that live show. And then we said, we want to reach a broader audience. We have this lovely community in Brooklyn that comes and supports us, and we love it, but we want to find a slightly broader reach. And so we started moving towards digital content, and we just released an album called Beanstalk Jack, which is a retelling of that classic tale. And it was super fun. And obviously, my background isn't in so much music. I did do a record when I was 11 in Germany, like a small, tiny single, and I have been singing in New York in various shows here and there. So I had some experience with it, but not that much. So it was fun and scary and exciting, and we're really proud of it. It's a musical journey from kind of folk. There's like bluegrass feeling in the beginning when Jack's down in the at his shack, and then when he goes up into the sky, it kind of travels through 80s rock, and the giant sounds like Tom Waits to me, And all the kids, when we were making the album, like the second it would get to that song, would like scream and like run out of the house, and my husband and I were like, I think that's working. So we made that album, and it won a couple of awards, a Family Choice Award and a Parent Product Award just recently, which we're really proud of. And now we're going to develop into a series of videos.
And so that's what I'm working on now. It's a huge project to take all of these songs and turn them into a series of animated videos using a couple of different techniques, but down-shooter puppetry and some stop animation. So I'm taking a lot of my choreography skills and interest in object manipulation and refocusing it in this direction, and it's really fun.
As far as distribution for that, are you going to be going for like a platform like YouTube or a different sort of platform?
We have someone we're talking to, and we're so early days with it that it could go either way. I mean, it could be our own YouTube channel, but there also is a distributor that has some ideas about ways of distributing it through sort of some of the bigger platforms. So yeah, we're looking at various ways. Obviously, you want to hold on to your content, but you also want to get your content out there. So like everyone else, we're weighing the pros and cons.
yeah. Trying to get started up on YouTube nowadays. I've been on the platform for 12 years now. Have not moved that needle at all. And I've put out content at just so much of it, and you just have to hit that certain niche with like a couple people, then all of a sudden it snowballs. So I just haven't found that niche. So
right.
Usually going the more traditional route
can be helpful.
Yeah, might be a lot better.
I think there's a real need for quality family entertainment. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do, which I feel really passionate about, is to really change the way that we bring videos into kids' lives, or entertainment into kids' lives. And I think it really is how you use it, and I think it can be used as an electronic babysitter, where you disconnect from your kid and you walk away and you're in two separate worlds and you just have some space from your child. And I think that's traditionally a lot of the way in which it's used. But really, 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 that's not what we want our paper canoe products to be. And I feel like one of the things that I remember and love about the NeverEnding Story, and I'm so moved by when I meet people, is that it was a story that stayed with them. It was a story that even as adults, it's not just the story that they remember. They remember who they were as a kid at that moment and what was going on in their lives and what was important to them and what it made them have the courage to kind of hold on to. And so it really isn't just about the artwork. It's about the opportunity to kind of wake something up in the person that's viewing it that is lasting. And so I think there's different kinds of engagement. It can be really passive or it can be really active. And one of the big questions I have whenever we're making something is, how can this activate the imagination of the viewer, of the child, and how can we make it fun enough and with enough jokes for adults that just when they're walking away to escape, they're like, no, just sit down with my kid and cuddle up and we'll do this together and we'll talk. And that's really my hope is that it's family entertainment. It makes the adult want to be a kid and sit down and slow down and remember their creative side, and it makes kids feel like adults because we don't talk down to them and the aesthetic values are high, and we're assuming that they're bright and smart and that their imagination is going to kick in.
I'll admit there are times with our daughter, she's 3, that we'll turn on her pad and we'll let her watch something, but there are certain things that I know that I can get her engaged in, and one of them is music. And yeah. I was sitting in our bedroom one day, and Twisted Sister was on, and my daughter Delia walked in, and I was like, it's just safe enough that you can watch it, no problem. And then I started figuring out her tastes in music are so eclectic, and she gets so animated when she hears certain types of music that I was like, okay, I need to explore this more and find more things like this, because if she's just sitting there watching a Disney show or watching a Minions movie that she's just watching, she's not actively participating.
Yeah, you want to expand the palette, and I think that's what's so cool about kids. I mean, it's really fun to create things for kids because they're at an age where they haven't been told what they should like and what they shouldn't. They're not worried about. They're really open and
they want to fall into a piece of music and dance. You know, they want to like let go and just be where the story takes them. And so part of what we did with Beanstalk Jack is we tried to put a lot of different musical styles on the album, and we worked with some of the best musicians in Brooklyn who don't play for children's albums at all. They're just consummate musicians. And so just the level of musicianship on the album is really high, and I think that kids deserve that. They deserve, like, you know, you want to give your kids really yummy food that's healthy, and you want to give them like really good art that they're like, wow, I want to play the guitar that well, or I want to, you know, make the saxophone sound like that, you know, so that they're exposed to exciting and varied things, so that they, you know, their sense of possibility is expanded.
When you're trying to get a child interested in the arts, it's kind of a two-part question. What is the right age to start pursuing that seriously and not just as a experimental watch and learn? And getting them involved, like seriously, like actually paying for the lessons and taking them to a music store and letting them possibly, you know, break a $1,600 Gibson or something like that.
I mean, I think that every kid is different, so it's super hard to generalize, but I haven't met a toddler that doesn't want to move their body or shake an instrument or make a painting. Like, I really haven't. Like, I haven't met a single one, and I've been a teaching artist for a long time, and part of what I do is I perform, but I also teach a lot. And as part of Paper Canoe, I often go and do workshops with kids before the show or after the show, so that their creativity is ignited. So, for example, with ASOX, there was a post-show puppet making workshop, and all the kids made the most amazing puppets, and then their parents would send me videos of the shows that the kids made at home with their characters that they created. So I really think that you need to start right away, because all you're doing in encouraging a kid to be artistic is you're just encouraging them to be imaginative. And I think we all need imagination, right? When our tax bill comes and we can't pay it, right? Get imaginative, right? Like, we all stumble into trouble in life, and like, what's going to solve the problem? Like, your own ingenuity, your own creativity. Like, there's no, you can't put a price on that. It's the most valuable thing you have is your ability to think, your ability to conceptualize a solution, your ability to craft something that you feel represents you authentically and is you know, an expression of who you are. That kind of makes you feel like you have space in the world. So I think you have to start right away, and you know, you might end up being a scientist, but the sort of brain memory of being creative and of problem solving and finding new doors, it's going to serve you in whatever capacity. It's going to serve you as a mom, as a president, like anything. Like, people need to be imaginative, you know?
Like taking dance classes for children, is there a certain thing to look out for when you get them started into that with classes? Are there things you should be on the lookout, like how they're being instructed in dance or anything like that?
Well, again, it's just, I think kids are really different, and I think some kids really need structure, and those kids should be given the opportunity to be in really structured environments like a ballet environment. And I think some kids really crave improvisatory movement, and they're going to get kind of shut down in a ballet class. And I think you just need to see who your child is and then give them the things that make them feel, most able to kind of explore. My daughter, I love ballet. I was a complete bunhead. I was in ballet as often as I could be and just wanted to be on the toe shoes as early as possible. And my daughter's completely not interested in that. You know, she's like I ended up being a modern dancer, so maybe it's from looking at me, but she just wants to do like creative dance, and she has this whole routine she created on these rings where she spins and like, it's like, so I can't, force her into ballet class. It doesn't make sense. So I think you just have to be really observant about who your child is, and there really isn't a one size fits all solution. But I mean, my daughter was on stage at 1 year old. She had her first New York premiere at 1. We did a dance show with professional dancers and their children, and it was an improvisation for an improvisation festival, and it was, we were terrified because here we were 6 professional dancers with essentially our toddlers, and you're so used to being polished on stage and being in command of every movement and every balance, and suddenly you have your toddler on stage and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And it was so amazing because it really captured the incredible juggling act that being a parent is. You're trying to do a solo and finish your turn, and then you see your child climbing up some stairs and you have to stop and run away. And the audience was just cracking up because it literally just, right in front of them was this sort of crazy juggling act we all do with trying to kind of be our adult selves and complete a task and keep our children from falling off something.
Yeah, I'm no stranger to that. My daughter likes to climb things that she shouldn't, like rope ladders and everything. So like, look how high I got, Daddy, and then she decides she wants to take a free fall off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a fun project because I also think, a lot of times dancers try to be so polished and kind of perfect and in control, and sticking kids in the show was such a radical idea, sort of so unconventional. We were all like, we're crazy for doing this. And it just ended up being a really fun thing. So that was my daughter's first show.
Speaking more of the adult, I don't want to say adult entertainment. That just sounded really bad. Entertainment geared more towards adults.
Yes, I totally get.
Ultra Low is a project that you mentioned that you have a role in, and can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So I definitely have been thinking about acting again and wondering, how exactly to kind of maneuver my way back in. And over the years, I've gotten different scripts, and I just was too busy, and it wasn't my focus. But Ultra Low, the script came across my desk, and it was kind of very clever idea about a film in a film, where there's sort of, it talks about how hard it is to make a film. And as someone who's been making and producing works in New York for the last 20 years, I had a lot of sympathy for the sort of notion of just how crazy and hard it is to make an art project, to make a film. And everyone in the film plays themselves. And so I was invited to come in and do a cameo as myself, doing a Q&A. And I do a lot of Q&As. I'm also a dance professor in New York City. And so Q&As it was sort of like, well, I do a lot of those. Sure, I'll come in and do a Q&A. So it was a fun way to kind of get back into doing a little bit of film, because I get to play me. And so I don't have to worry too much about doing that wrong. But it was also just a nice way to, be back in that environment. And it really confirmed for me that I really do miss acting. And now that my dance career is shifting gears, I'm back on camera classes, and I'm looking at scripts, and so I'm excited about opening that chapter again.
Is there a certain passion project that you'd like to be attached with, or a certain movie that you'd like to be a part of?
Oh my God. Speaking of Stranger Things, I'm like addicted to that show. Yeah, I would love a little cameo in that. I don't know, some kind of funny 80s cameo would be awesome. But I think, the material that really speaks to me is stuff that is more sci-fi fantasy. I do really like that genre. I feel like in some ways when things are too close to reality, we can almost like tune out, because then we start to get stressed. It's like too close to home, Whereas like with fantasy,
it's more like big ideas and kind of thinking about larger questions, and it's distanced enough from our reality that we can, in some ways, I think, look more deeply at questions because we're a little bit more open. We haven't like already formed our judgments, and so you can kind of fall into a sci-fi fantasy film and grapple with bigger issues and bigger questions and kind of surrender to that. And then in some ways I feel like I end up thinking more deeply and richly about those kinds of stories.
What was your favorite fantasy feature besides NeverEnding Story?
Yeah, well, no, I think the original Blade Runner was just so prophetic and amazing. And I still have nightmares, like the images from Brazil, like when I saw that as a kid, yep. And like just all the face, you know, the face stretching and like just the weird, like you're like, oh my God, it's all happening. I don't know. Yeah, I think that those films, they sort of really unsettling, and they're just sort of like touch on some of the sort of the bigger questions that we have to deal with. And, you know, so yeah, I think those films stayed with me.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that fantasy films are reflecting our current reality so much, especially Brazil. Terry Gilliam got it right on the head.
I know. It's terrifying. Did you see The Shape of Water? I just saw that. And it was so beautiful. I mean, films like that, you just want to, you know, you're like, please, yes, I want to be back in that, you know. That film was genius. I loved it. I think it's, I saw it on Valentine's Day. It was very romantic.
Del Toro just has that, he has some weird insight into what we want to see in fantasy. And then Doug, his portrayal behind any mask is always so amazing. No matter how many prostheses you put in front of him, you can still tell it's him, and his performances are always knockout.
It's just the acting in that film across the board. I mean, it just wasn't every single performance was incredible, and yeah, the story's so moving, you know.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, when can we see Ultra Low? When is that supposed to be out? I didn't see a release date or anything listed on that.
You know, I'm sort of not. I don't have that information. I do know that it's in sort of final editing stages right now. Okay. And so it should be really soon. But I don't actually know the release date. I wasn't told.
And I saw in this email here that I got when we were setting this up that you were advocating for Peter Jackson's remake of NeverEnding Story. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm totally out of the loop there.
I was advocating? Well, no. I mean, what I understand is that the rights to the NeverEnding Story are completely locked up. Like, I know Leonardo DiCaprio had them for a while. I know... I mean, really, really, really big power players had the rights, and they were not able to get the Michael Ende Foundation to budge on reissuing the rights to do another version of it. So people ask me about it all the time, but from what I hear, and it's, you know, definitely going to be very, very difficult. A lot of people who you'd think would be able to get that to budge were not able to get it to budge. So we'll see, but yeah, I'm not holding my breath for that.
If eventually, because everything gets a remake or a reboot eventually in Hollywood, if the NeverEnding Story were to restart, what would you like to see out of it to make it special for a new generation?
Well, I think that you know, I think that in many ways, what was really lovely about the film, in my opinion, is just that they were using puppets that were manipulated by people. I mean, they were enormous, so each puppet had like 6 or 7 people manipulating it, you know. But I think that my hope is that they did do a remake, that there would be a sort of careful consideration of not over green screening everything, that they would, you know, now we have what's it called, animatronics, where it's sort of like, you know, robotics, and but it's
still like a thing in the world. But I think that, just not losing that sense of handmade human thing. Like, I don't know, I really love that about it. But I think it's, completely, it could be updated, and things have moved so far forward on that level. But just a kind of careful balance to kind of work with the technology that exists without losing kind of some of the soul that having those handmade, hand-operated things bring to things.
I guess when you have something, when you're told to look at like a tennis ball and that's supposed to be something on a green screen, I guess there's something that's lost in the performance of actually having something physically there to interact with.
I mean, it's an interesting question because, like, on stage, you don't have those things, right? You're constantly imagining a scenario. And so in many ways, I have more experience acting, not looking at a tennis ball, but being on a stage where, the world that I'm in is really painted by the imagination. So it's not that I don't think that that's a really powerful and useful thing to do. I just think that, like, for example, in The Shape of Water, each image was so carefully chosen, just the specific alarm clock and the specific pot goes on the stove. And there's such a sort of careful, loving attention to the aesthetic details of it. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, I think that sometimes when we're sort of hand placing those things, there's a way in which there's a care about the aesthetics that I think was really, really apparent in the first version. There's so many artists employed in that. It was just like 600, that was like, and they were working for years. It was just like insane, It was like so many minds drawing and sketching and painting, and I think that just preserving the sort of high-level artistry of the detail of each thing. I mean, you can do that in a computerized form as well, but I think that there's something lovely about including real objects too. Okay.
Well, Tami, thank you very much for taking time out of your day on this afternoon to speak to us. I really appreciate it, and I know my wife's going to be very excited to hear your answers.
My pleasure. And if you want to check out what I'm doing, the best way to find me is on Facebook at Paper Canoe Company, and on Twitter at NeverEnding Tami or at Paper Canoe Company. And if people want to kind of back, view like into our studio of what we're making and doing, we just started a Patreon page where we're going to be videotaping makings of the videos, and also I have a new series where I'm going to be doing a craft activity with a kind of celebrity friend or super interesting artist friend where adults sit down and try to make a craft activity for kids, which then parents can do with their kids, but usually they're pretty challenging, so it's fun to watch people struggle in adulthood regaining their childhood skills. So that will be available on the Patreon page. We're shooting one of those on Thursday this week, so they can check out all the Paper Canoe activity on those places.
For the Patreon, what is the Patreon address for people to search for?
Oh, it's just Paper Canoe on Patreon. Okay. Yeah.
I guess you have. Do you have several different tiers for Patreons on that page? Absolutely.
Yes. It can be as low as $1 and as high as you want. So yeah.
There's no ceiling.
It's really, It's and I think it's funny because I feel like the craft activities, we want to make them so that the parents have as much fun as the kids. So they have a little, you're not just like, suffering through it, that they're super fun to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of activities that we get in like the boxes where it's just you're going through the motions. Yes, you just made a paper flower. Congratulations, child. Yeah. So we're gonna we're working on a new song for another album that is sort of in the vault right now. We're gonna wait on it, but there's a tune that we're working on called All the Colors of the Rainbow. So we're making robot people rainbow shakers on our first episode.
with Kit from TV on the Radio, which is just an amazing band if you haven't checked them out. So that'll be really fun. We'll do a little singing together.
All right, Tami. Well, thanks again, and we appreciate it, and we hope to see more of you soon. Definitely on the big screen. Hopefully we'll see a lot more of you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You have yourself a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.